Welcome to the Top Order podcast, coming to you here from Loughborough, otherwise known as Loughborough in the UK. We've got Lippy in his garage just outside Albany, Baldy's in his bedroom, and I'm in my office. It's the Top Order podcast. We're with pre-eminent sports psychologist Dr. Jamie Barker, and we're going to talk England, India, the Bazball revolution, and much, much more. Stay tuned. Well, Jamie, I don't know if you've been listening to the podcast much over the course of the last few weeks, but I've been getting a hell of a lot of shit from the Kiwi boys, really for my sort of lacklustre attitude to the renaissance of England cricket. So it's great to see you representing with your lovely powder blue uniform on there, mate. I think that's the 2019 World Cup version, isn't it? So the less said about that, the better. But look, we were keen to get you on. We've got a little bit of listener feedback in the social channels talking about this Bazball revolution. But before we get into all of that, just keen really as an England fan to get your take on the summer so far. And of course, this fantastic run chasing down a mere 378 to win by 7 wickets at Birmingham, my hometown, at Edgbaston. Thoughts?
Yeah, kind of tricky one to explain in some ways psychologically. You kind of, England have been, it's fair to say, pretty ordinary in Test cricket over the recent past, and then you get a new captain and a new head coach, and all of a sudden it looks to be pretty neat and swimming in the right direction. And I think sometimes it can be a case of new ideas, new impetus, but it feels like there's a little bit more going on behind the scenes than just that. Because I think if it was that simple, then lots of other teams would do the same and would get the same kind of bounce. And that could be another explanation, is that this is just the psychological bounce that we see, in the Premier League, where, or in football more generally, where managers would get axed and then a new manager would come in and for 6 or 7 games, it's almost like, well, what was the problem? And I think, Steve Smith, I saw a video of him last week talking about, laughing, saying, is this sustainable? And I think, I don't want to be the pessimist, but that's part of the question I'd be asking about: how sustainable is this approach? And can you adopt that in every situation and in every condition? And I think...
Come on, boys. I can't let Jamie and I can't let you, Binksy. You guys have got to be excited about what's happening with this team at the moment. You guys, 378. And to be honest, when that total came up, was it ever even in doubt? Did you even, honestly, you guys have got to show me some excitement, because otherwise I might have to find a new podcast. I'm okay if England's going to win, but we must have some excitement when that happens.
So Jamie, just take the psychology away from it. Purely as a cricket fan, you are sitting there in your England shirt, and I'm glad you've done it, because it winds up an Australian and a Kiwi and most of our listeners. But just purely from a cricketing perspective, you played a lot of cricket, and you've been a fan of the game as well. What are your emotions just around watching the side, and maybe indulge Lippy a little bit with a little bit of revelry?
Yeah, it's a good point, because I was probably trying to give you the professional lens, but actually, if I give you the fan, bloody excited, bloody amazing, And I was at Edgbaston on the second day, unfortunately, when it rained. But it was interesting, the sense in the crowd when we bowled India out, that it was almost like, right, come on, and it's a little bit like in a footballing sense when teams get a corner. And it's almost like you hear the crowd go, and you could feel that. And I've never been at a test ground, I don't think, ever watching England, where there was this sense of, we're going to bat now. So, everybody sit down. And I think they used to talk about the Botham effect, didn't they? That, the bars used to be pretty empty, would be pretty busy, sorry. And then when Botham came out to bat, then, fans would then go and watch. And it was a little bit like that. It was thinking, crikey, I can't actually ever remember this. But then, I'm going, actually, 378, probably, we've got a pretty decent chance of getting this. And I don't think I've ever thought that before. But it's interesting how you can kind of get sort of caught up in that. And, amazing. But I think equally, knowing that, what impact is that having on the opposition? Because India, we you know, they must be thinking, crikey, we could have scored 900 here and England would probably still have a go. And I think that mentality shift is huge. And so it's not just huge for you as the team, it's also huge for the opposition, thinking, crikey, it doesn't matter what we do here, we're going to be up against it because these guys are going to come out hard. And I mean, you know, you talk about the great Australian sides, but I don't even think they played like this. You know, they would often look to win games in a more traditional sense, you know, bowl you out, score loads of runs in the first innings, bowl you out cheap in the fourth innings. But this is a completely different way of playing. So hopefully that is an element of excitement. It's great to watch, isn't it? You know, fantastic for the world of cricket, I think.
And Lippy, I'll just jump in as well. I know on the social media, someone made a comment around how England were going to go on that final day, chasing the runs. And after the start that we got off to with Lees at the top of the order and Crawley, I made a pessimistic comment that, you know, a wicket here changes this in the morning. That was, you know, that's the old way of approaching a big run chase, isn't it? A couple of wickets early in the fifth morning, and you know the game's over by lunchtime, and you know you're in the bar, and it was we were never really going to get 378. If I'm brutally honest, I did that as my normal social media trick. It was pure kidology. I actually thought we were going to piss it, particularly with, you know, Root and Bairstow set at the crease. I was just like, there's an old ball. We got, I think, 25 overs or something like that until the new ball was available on that morning, and I just thought, yeah. I am getting up tonight, or, you know, going to come home from work and have dinner, put the kids to bed, and I'm just going to watch England canter to victory. And I've got to say, I've never, ever felt that watching this cricket side. And that goes back to my first memories of watching England play Test cricket in 1991, 92, a West Indies tour, I think. So, mate, you've got it out of me. I was pumped.
Hey, Baldy, I wouldn't mind you jumping in, actually. Jamie made a good point there about the Australian team and watching them. Like, I'd be interested to know, sort of that feeling of you when you were watching that Australian side that just felt like it was going to win all the time.
Yeah, but like Jamie said, it was a very, very different way of going about their cricket. Australia wore you down with Warne and McGrath. This England side seemed to attack at both ends, and I think that's a major shift in the psyche of English cricket, not just to be able to chase runs down, but to go after the bowling with just disdain for wherever the ball was being pitched. It didn't matter if they were bowling dry outside off stump, 6th, 7th channel. Bairstow was hitting the ball up through on the up through the offside. They ran really well between the wickets. The running between the wickets was super aggressive. So not only were they looking to hit boundaries, but they were looking to hit 4 and then 1. So all of that kind of batting side of things, massive, massive mind shift. But on the other side of the coin as well, with their bowling and their fielding, England were just all out attack. It felt like all the time, and it didn't really matter whether it was new ball or old ball. England were trying to attack and take 10 wickets as quickly as they could, which they've talked about. Binksy, you pointed it out to me offline the other day. You know, taking 10 wickets in 60 overs, even if it costs us 4s, is 240. Taking 10 wickets in 100 overs, if it costs us 3s, is 300. We're plus 60 in that scenario. So they're the kind of numbers that are supporting this all-out attack mentality, and it doesn't matter if it's new ball, Jimmy and Stuart Broad, or if it's, you know, old ball, it's Ben Stokes, it's guys bowling short, it's trying to do something all the time to take wickets. That is a little bit different to that Australian mentality, even with Warne and McGrath. That was, we're going to build pressure over a period of 10 or 12 overs and then look to strike at 60, whereas now England are looking to strike at 45, 50 if they can with the ball. And looking, as you say, the remarkable thing about all of this is England's mentality was, we've got 25 overs before we get the second new ball to chase down 380 runs inside 80 overs. That is an unheard of, unprecedented mentality in modern Test cricket. So that's what's exciting. Win, lose or draw, the fact that 4.5 is the new normal now in Test cricket and the new way of going about business, that's the thing that's got to have fans excited about coming back to watch Test cricket, because that level of attack and that level of excitement and entertainment is on par with T20, and it's on par with ODI cricket, because there's so much more that can happen in a Test match in and around that 4.5 runs and over that makes it just a fantastic spectacle for fans.
Awesome. Jamie, so you'll know you were tagged on social media. I think one of our listeners said it would be great to get sports psychologist on to talk about this. And we said, well, for the first time in the Top Order podcast history, we might be able to deliver on some listener feedback. So we've invited you on to talk about just perhaps how England have done this. So if we cast our minds back to the start of the English summer, we didn't have a cricket managing director, we didn't have a head coach, we didn't have a captain. All of a sudden, that kind of came full circle. We got Rob Key appointed as managing director England men's cricket. He's appointed a bit of a left field selection in Brendon McCullum as the red ball coach. Almost unnoticed, Matthew Mott sort of slipped into that white ball side. The first question I want to ask you is, if you think about the lead into that New Zealand Test series for McCullum, was only about a week from being at the IPL with the KKR. He's got 7 days or so with the side, and then has gone into essentially 4 pretty much back-to-back Test matches against, let's not forget, World Test champions in New Zealand and the world's one-day ranked side. I'm pretty sure New Zealand might have left the mace at Lords on their way out. But look, in terms of I guess in terms of what McCullum has been able to do in that short space of time, take us behind the scenes. What might he have done alongside his skipper Ben Stokes and the well-fabled leadership group that they might have established as part of that back room?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're seeing here is not too uncommon to any high performing business, or whether it be the military or it is having a sort of a clear sort of leadership structure. It's having everybody sort of buy in, but almost it's just taking a step back and going, actually, what is our identity as a team, as a business, as an organisation? What sort of cricket do we want to be playing? But more importantly, perhaps, what kind of players do we have available at this moment in time in terms of playing a certain brand of cricket? So actually, if you look at the England side, with the exception of maybe a couple of players, they're probably not all in it for the long game. They're not able to bat, some of them, for 2.5 days, and the very sort of stoic approach. But when you look at that team, they're all pretty aggressive, they're all pretty positive, they're all shot makers. The bowling is pretty similar as well. It's attack minded, it's take wickets, it's kind of be aggressive. So actually, when you look at it, you go, what sort of a team do we have, and what kind of identity would make sense for that? But also, what sort of a team do we want to be? And then all of a sudden, you can start then to craft. Actually, it's going to be about fun, and it's going to be enjoyment. It's going to be about being aggressive, because that reflects the very people that we have out on the field. But I think one of the key things that we generally do as well, and probably is done less so in sport, is actually going out to the players and saying, guys, why do you play for England? What does this mean to you? What sort of a cricket do you want to be playing? Rather than the head coach saying, right, guys, this is the way we're going to do it. I want Binksy to block the shit out of it, and for 2 days, and this is how. And it's kind of like, well, Binksy might go, yeah, but I don't really want to play that way. But if that's what I have to do, then I'll do it. Whereas if you then start to go, guys, how do you want to play your cricket? What were the very reasons that you started playing cricket? So go back to some of that sort of childhood stuff. And when we do that, we know that all the reasons that we all played cricket were because it was fun. You could hit something. You could run around, you'd catch something, and you'd throw yourself around. So it's actually not necessarily rocket science, but really just trying to connect with some of those values that I think that are generally the main motivator behind why we do stuff. I think as we get into the more professional realms, it's like, well, we've got to hit here, we've got to hit here, you've got to, your head's got to be going. It becomes very laden with some of this technical jargon, which, don't get me wrong, is really important at certain times. But actually, you're not dealing with players who don't know how to play cricket here. You're dealing with guys that know how to play the game. So you create then a template to just go and express and have fun. And the outcome of that, well, it looks brilliant. It looks like a load of guys playing for pure fun and enjoyment. And if you look at Stokes' behaviour on the field, smiling, fun. You look at players in the slips, they're having a laugh and a joke. He's highly supportive. I think that's the key thing to say. As a leader on the field, you're not seeing 4 balls and then him turn around and shaking his head. a bowler might go for 4, but they've executed the plans, and he's like clapping his hands and he's patting them on the back. So actually what you've got there is a leader who is really supportive, highly supportive. You've got McCullum, highly supportive. And I would imagine in the background, Rob Key has been laying the foundation. And if you I don't know Rob Key, but what I know about him, pretty fun-loving guy, I would say, humorous, would take his cricket serious, but not overly serious in that sense. You can start to see how some of that is permeating through. So, yeah, it's probably a bit of a long-winded rant, but hopefully that makes some sort of sense in terms of what we see. So I'd be saying it's very much about identity and values and connection with those things.
Yeah, on the stuff that you've just been saying, is it surprising from a psychology point of view that it's happened so quickly? Because I think when we talked about the series, beforehand, we were saying, well, okay, McCullum's come in, it might take him this whole series or this whole summer really to start kind of seeing what impact he can have on the squad. And Stokes, I want to make it clear, I actually don't think it's all McCullum. I mean, he's obviously had an impact, but as you say, Stokes seems to be having a huge impact as well. But yeah, from that psychology point of view, how is it surprising that it's happened just so quickly? Because that's been the most surprising thing for me from not having that background.
Yeah, and I guess this is where when we started the call, I was probably being a bit pessimistic because part of me psychologically thinks it could just be a bounce. It's almost like the old regime has gone, a new regime has come in, and everyone just gets a bit of a lift. So I think that's the cautionary note I'd just be shining on it is to say, yeah, the sustainability, the longevity of this will really be the proof in the pudding. And because it could just be a bounce. I hope it isn't. I really hope it isn't. But you see this so many times in sport. The new coach, the new manager, players get a lift because we're just doing stuff differently. If you compare it with Roots, it's difficult to challenge Roots as a player. In fact, you can't. But as a captain, he would have had fielders out on the boundary early on. And if you compare that with the approach that Stokes takes, 4 slips in a gully, 5 slips in a gully, it's completely different. So straight away, you've got a very different behaviour set that's going on there. But again, it could just be that it's different, and therefore guys are going, this is great. But, if we get skittled out for 66 and 50 in the next two, then equally people will be going, well, is it the way to go? And if we concede 600, So yeah, I don't want to be the pessimist, but you see so many times the psychological bounce in sport that it potentially could be that.
If it isn't a bounce, if this is a long-term thing, how long does the streak need to go on for before we can kind of put the bounce theory to bed? How long does a psychological bounce normally last for before you kind of see a regression to the mean?
Yeah, I mean, the research done in football across loads of different leagues is that generally what you start to see is, when a manager is kind of on the way out, is that performances will generally gradually and then rapidly nosedive. And then when you get a new manager in, you see that immediate response, and there might be a gradual increase in performance. But say it can be anything between 6, 9, 12 months that you can start to regress back to the mean. So it really depends on the nature of the playing squad, the position that the team are in terms of league position, whether they're fighting for the championship or relegation, those types of things. But it isn't that long, actually, when you think about it. Sometimes it just falls out of our memory because we go, oh, this guy's come in and they've made a huge difference. So for me, I'd kind of be looking at, this time next year, where are we at? Because in that time, England would have toured and, yeah, they'll have played a summer series or half of a summer series again. So I think that would be the testing ground for me. In the next 12 months, where are we at? What does the success rate look like? What's the brand of cricket? Are they making changes when they go overseas, or are they still playing the same thing? And I think that would be the proof for me. If we can sustain this over 12 months, then it's probably looking in good shape. Bearing in mind, there'll probably be new players that come in and around that 12 months as well. So are they able to carry that on? And from a head coach's point of view, this is always the challenge, is about being current and being innovative. And sometimes, you can't be a one-trick pony and have one message. So because otherwise players will just get used to it. So it's kind of that, how do you keep upscaling that brand, that identity? Also otherwise it become just quite mundane. It'll be just, okay, right. You need that consistent impetus. And I guess somebody like Sir Alex Ferguson, I get a United quote in there, but somebody like Sir Alex would have been great at that, constantly looking for that evolution and without revolution, I guess.
Jamie,
how much does the continuity of selection help in terms of keeping that message going? This is the first time I think that I can remember that England have picked the same batting lineup for 4 consecutive tests, and they've stuck with their bowlers as well. They've stuck with Jimmy and Stewart. As long as they've been fit, they've played. Matthew Potts has been a revelation coming into the side. But how much psychologically does continuity of selection, particularly as an opening batter or as a young bowler, and also as a spinner, help with that understanding of role, understanding of what you need to do within the side, and being able to go and execute those skills, knowing that you've done it before and that you can do it again and again and again if you have to?
And I think, the work I would do in professional elite sport, I would say is huge. And the bottom line of that is trust. And as human beings, we like to know that we're valued and that we're trusted. But also we don't like uncertainty as human beings. So telling a player that you're going to play for the next 12 months, wonderful. That gives you certainty. We just undertaken a piece of research looking at mental health in professional cricket, in male professional cricket in the UK. And one of the biggest stresses, will be no surprise to you guys, was contracts. And guys that were on one year contracts experienced the most stress, the most unhelpful emotions versus guys who were on 2 and 3 year. Quite obviously, they were given the continuity, they were given certainty. So I think exactly the same thing is, and the old England adage. I remember, Mark Lathwell played 1 test in the 90s. He scored shed loads of runs for Somerset. He was going to be the new guy, came in, played 1 test and that was it. And I think in those days it was like, you might get 1 go at this. Whereas now you're saying, actually, you're not just going to get a series, you're going to get a year. You're going to get a year. And whatever that year looks like, we're backing you because we think you're the best player. And I think it's huge. The players I talk to, that what the coaches say or the behaviours that the coaches display towards a player is worth its weight in gold. We can have conversations about confidence and about where they get confidence from. But ultimately, a comment by the coach, a behaviour that demonstrates support for that player will supersede any of those things, because that is the currency they value most of all, above and beyond what a commentator would say, above and beyond what maybe the teammate would say. It is the value of the coach and the selectors, and that's massive.
Jamie, the rhetoric around the performance over the last 4 test matches, the word clarity has been used a hell of a lot. And almost that's the only word that's been used. It's just, we've given the guys clarity and that's it. That's all we're going to do. I guess sort of delving under the covers a little bit, can that vast performance improvement, albeit over a short space of time, really be as simple as that clarity? And then the second part of that is, when England inevitably hit a bump, how do they stick to that message and not start adding lots and lots of things to it?
Yeah, again, two really great questions in relation to the world of sport, I suppose. I think clarity is important. It can often be a bit of a throwaway. It can be seen, it can't be as simple as that. But we know, of course, in elite sport, there is so much noise that can go on. There is so much input that potentially could be going on. And I think having a very clear objective at a team level, or objectives, but also at an individual level, like you get the example of Potts. You can see there clarity in what he's being asked to do, it looks quite simple, but of course it isn't just that simple. But it is around clarity. So if you're an opening batter, is it just to be super aggressive, run hard, call well? It could be. It could be like, actually, those 3 things, if you do them repeatedly well, you're probably going to be in a good position. It's not about, right, you've got to score 65% of your runs down between, mid wicket and deep fine leg, because that's where, or you against this bowler, you've got to hit him through a deep extra cover or whatever. And while that information is important, it just doesn't always aid to clarity. So I think having very clear goals about actually the brand of cricket we're trying to play, the objectives for this particular session, or maybe for the next 10 overs, but then having clarity as an individual player and knowing your role. I've worked in lots of teams where you would say to a player, okay, you bat at 5 or you bat at 6 and you bowl. What do you think your role is? And it would always surprise me that they would sometimes say, well, I bat at 5 and 6 and I bowl. Okay, but in what context? Or well, I do those things. I'm being facetious, but there wasn't always the depth of clarity that I would have expected. And even when you talk to guys that open the batting, I open the batting. That's my role. Yeah, but what's the role of opening the batting? What approach are you taking? And it hasn't always been clear. So I think that given that, again, is freedom, but also a sense of direction. And I would imagine players are having buy-in to that as well. This is the way I want to be playing. This is the way I think I can be contributing towards that team as well, I think is important. And the second point of your question, Binksy, can you just remind me? Sorry, I got excited and carried away.
Yeah, so the second piece really is around when they do inevitably hit a bump in the road, how do they kind of, stick to that course and not add too much to it to try and maybe right the tiller, to continue the sailing references?
Yeah, trust in the process, because I think that the key sign is that you hit a bump in the road and then you regress back to what you've done before. And that demonstrates, like wildfire then through the team, actually, they didn't really believe in the sustainability of the process. So you have to trust it until there becomes a point where you go, actually, guys, this isn't working. But I think a blip in the road, a road bump, they're always there. But it is around trusting the process. If this is the brand, this is the way we generally believe we're going to do stuff, we carry it on. And that has to come through in the messaging as well. Again, around clarity that we're in this for the long haul. It isn't just a short-term fix to get bums on seats. This is generally how we want to be doing stuff.
You and Adam have done a tremendous job at keeping the lid on all the excitement that I think the neutral cricket fans and the general cricket public are feeling about this England resurgence, renaissance, resurrection, whatever word that you want to use to describe it. How much, from a psychological point of view, are the players buying into the hype and buying into or reading about in the red tops or on social media the success that they've been having? How much are they having to keep a lid on their own kind of positive praise, if you like, to make sure that this thing can be sustainable and they don't get carried away with the hype? How much of that do you think is going on within the team?
Specifically, I wouldn't know. I mean, a lot of players I would work with, don't often engage in the media for obvious reasons, because I think sometimes they describe that, the highs and the lows that the media would give, and if you live your life through that, you can be quite a soul destroying place. One day you can be the next thing since sliced bread, and the following day you can be chastised and be the worst thing. So I think, it's tricky to know how they would be engaging with that. I think internally you'd be going, okay, we've chased 380, brilliant, let's celebrate that moment, what an achievement. But then equally you'd be kind of like, okay, well, what's the next process, what's the next part of that? I'm a big believer that you celebrate success and you reward success. Also, otherwise you kind of go, well, what the heck do you play the sport for? So you enjoy that moment, you enjoy that test victory because it was monumental. But then good teams, I think, are able to then go, okay, that was then, this is now. So we've enjoyed that. We've been brilliant. It was fantastic. But what's coming next? And then we start to build towards that. And I think that's generally how you then become sustainable. I think, again, being around some teams, I'm not sure they ever reward success particularly well. And that isn't just going out and partying. It's kind of like, different ways you can demonstrate that. But I think sometimes it can be like, well, we don't really celebrate the successes, but we hammer ourselves when we fall short. So then kind of go, well, where's the enjoyment in this? What's the point of doing this? You spend so much time working hard for it. And then when it comes around, you don't enjoy it because, we can't be seen to be having a good time and stuff like that. So I'd like to think they would celebrate it. But then internally, you will then just trying to look at the sustainability and trying to keep a lid on it. Yeah, probably not engaging too much in the media, although that'd be difficult. They got large social media presence, and but yeah, I think that would be the way I'd be trying to control it if I was in that environment.
And Jamie, we will finish the podcast on a positive note, but I just want to pick up on, I guess, the opposite of Baldy's comment there. So Joe Root has been absolutely brilliant, I think, in all of the interviews that I've seen him do post-match. And, he obviously picked up about 17 different trophies for the amount of runs he scored over the course of the last 4 games. So he was at that Sky Kart or with Jonathan Agnew a hell of a lot. Very self-deprecating in terms of saying, this wouldn't have happened when I was captain. But I think, part of that, yes, he's a cheeky chappy, but there's got to be a little bit of a mask there from a psychological perspective. So my question here is, could this current rhetoric really start to affect some of the old guard, particularly the Roots and the Andersons and the Broads, who've kind of been through some of those lows? How would Root really be feeling after 5 years in the role, not the level of success that they've had in the last sort of couple of months? And now it looks as if, change a captain, use the word clarity, and you win 4 test matches on the bounce and everybody's scoring double hundreds. So, yeah, could this have a negative effect on any of those guys that have been in the group for a little while?
Yeah, possibly. But if you... But I think sometimes, people sort of go, well, he's a bright guy, he's an intelligent guy, and you would go, look, what they're doing is maybe different to how I did stuff, and he would understand that, the momentum shifts in sport and bounces, so he would have seen lots of that, and I would get a sense that, he wouldn't be bitter by it. He'd be excited by it. I think Jimmy came out and said, this is the most fun I've ever had on a cricket field, or a message like that. And you think, this guy's pretty much lived and seen most things. So to be able to say that, that's pretty powerful. I think the other thing that we perhaps haven't spoken about, and I think is a really interesting narrative, is that for effectively 2 years, this group of players had lived in a bubble, as a lot of other test teams did. And what we know about those is the mental health consequences and the well-being consequences of living in a bubble are pretty bad. And I think, so it's, again, I'm being slightly pessimistic. So it's easy to say it is about clarity and it's about new coaches. But again, another factor that could play a huge difference here is we are back to relative normality in terms of how we now play cricket. And players staying in hotels but being able to socialise, families being around, mixing with the opposition in ways that we did before. So again, I think that's a really important consideration when we start to think about how England are playing. Of course, doesn't, because you're not seeing that with every team. So there is something interesting happening. But I think England predominantly, from what we hear, suffered the most in terms of tours that they've been on during the COVID period and lived in a lot of bubbles, and Root would have been one of the constant mainstays of that, as Broad and Anderson would have been. So I think for them that would have worn them down. So you would get quite fatigued and tired, living in that, but also then trying to lead, be a senior player. So actually there may be an element of I needed somebody else to do it, and I'm glad somebody else is doing it because now it enables me to do the stuff I wanted to do, I think. And I think that's an interesting or an important consideration when we're talking about what we're seeing here.
Awesome. Well, Jamie, as ever, it's been fantastic to talk cricket with you for half an hour or so and get your take on it. What are your predictions for the end of the Test match summer for this England team? And don't let Lippy down with, guarded realism. What are we going to see in those Test matches against the South Africans? Yeah,
well, so I was chatting to a friend about this the other day. So I was going, I hold New Zealand in high regard. Brilliant Test team. We took them down. I think India have probably got one of the best bowling attacks in the world, and we took them down. South Africa, I probably don't think are as good as either of those two. You know, in terms of collective team, but also, you know, bowling or batting lineups. So, you know, I'm going for a clean slate here. I'm going for a bit of a whitewash. There's my prediction. Unless the rain hammers us, but I could see it being. I'm hoping it's going to be destructive. That's what I'm looking forward to. Yeah.
Well, Jamie, as I said, absolute pleasure to have you join us on the podcast again. A rare occasion where we end with a little bit of English optimism. Please do look out in the feed over the course of the next couple of weeks. We've got plenty more cricket coming up. There's white ball cricket all over the world, which we will talk upon. A brilliant century by Michael Bracewell in the game against Ireland this morning for the Black Caps. We'll also have Mark Ellison up on the podcast as well in the feed. And as well, our fantastic and stellar back catalogue, including the venerable Dr. Jamie Barker, has appeared on a number of episodes. So dip back if you like what you've heard about his musings on our wonderful red and white ball game. But for now, it's good night and God bless from us all here in Auckland. We'll see you soon. Good night.